You're listening to the Authorpreneur podcast, episode number 24. Welcome to the Authorpreneur podcast. I'm your host, thriller writer Amelia Hay. On this podcast, I will bring you writing, book marketing, and self-publishing advice so that you can create your dream author business, build your author platform, and be creatively independent. You can find the episode show notes and lots more information on the podcast page at ameliahay.com/podcast. Hello writers, so you've reached the end of the climactic sequence of your novel and you're wondering how to give your story a satisfying conclusion. Or perhaps you're currently outlining your novel and you're stuck and not sure how to plan the denouement scenes for your story in a way that will satisfy your future readers. I know the idea of having to wrap up every loose thread in your novel can be daunting. Trust me, I've been at that place 3 times before. That's why in this episode I'm going to explain what are the denouement scenes, share 3 tips on how to write and structure these scenes, and break down 3 examples from literature. Before I dive into the writing tips, this is the 13th installment in my series on 3-act structure. If you've just joined me on this episode, then I will link the previous 12 episodes in the show notes and over on my blog. You can find the show notes at ameliahay.com/episode-024. After this, there is only 1 episode left in Series 1. The episode will focus on how to structure a story using the hero's journey, so keep an eye out for this in your favourite podcasting app. Depending on the length of the episode, I may decide to break up the show into parts, which I will release on a weekly basis, but I will let you know if this is necessary. In the event of multiple shows on the hero's journey, there will be 2 podcast episodes per week until we reach the final episode. So this means 1 episode on the hero's journey and 1 behind the scenes diary show each week. After this, between season 1 and 2, I will transition back to weekly behind the scenes podcast diary episodes where I will talk about my experiences with revision and the next steps in the publishing journey for my thriller novels Missing, Silence, and Immunity. The name of this plot point is borrowed from the French word le denouement, and its literal translation is finish or untying. It's also referred to as the return to the real world plot point. Essentially, it's the final outcome of your story that occurs after the climactic sequence where you ease back the tension and reduce the story conflict. In this scene or scenes, depending upon the length of your story, any secrets are revealed and all loose ends are tied up. Even though you want to tie up loose ends, there is one thing you need to avoid, and that is destroying all your hard work in writing the story by crafting a long and drawn-out summary. With all of that in mind, how do you write the denouement scenes of your novel? Next, I'm going to share with you 3 tips for writing these final scenes for your novel in a way that will satisfy your readers. Tip number 1, tie up all loose ends. The story question you posed in the first act or the promise of the inciting incident needs to be answered in the denouement scenes. But not all stories need everything tied up in a pretty bow. However, if you're writing the first book in a series or a book that's a part of a larger story, you're better off writing a denouement that achieves the fulfillment of promises but also leaves a few questions lingering in the mind of your characters and readers. At the same time, you need to give your readers enough explanation that they will be satisfied with your story. So keep in mind that readers want to know what happened, how, and why. And they want answers for each of the major plot threads and characters, including the protagonist, antagonist, and any characters they've come to care about. Improving upon the denouement of your story is something that can be achieved by paying attention to feedback from alpha and beta readers, especially if you have a lot of comments about what happened to this character and things like that, or how did things work out with this storyline, especially if you have a few storylines going on and you accidentally drop one. That's easy to do in a story that's a little bit more complicated. Tip number 2, show the protagonist's condition after his journey. A great return to the real world scene is not just about the apparent tying up of loose ends and story questions. It's also about your protagonist's journey, both physical and emotional. You need to show both the emotional and literal wounds they've developed as a result of the previous events. The Denouement answers 2 questions about this inner journey. Question 1. How has the events of the story affected the way your hero views himself and his world? Because your character has come out the other side, they should view their world through the eyes of the events that just unfolded. It's only natural, and it's what we do as humans. This new world view is what causes a mother who has just lost a child to become overprotective of her other children, or a once trusting person to become distrustful of their loved ones when they learn a secret from their past that others have hidden from them for years. And question number 2, what realizations have they made about themselves? It's in moments of distress that we often see who we are in our core once all the masks we wear are shed, and sometimes this can be a bit of a surprise. We can often do things that surprise us, and in moments of reflection we try and reconcile these 2 versions of ourselves, who we were before and who we are now. The same should be true of your hero. These more profound moments cause your protagonist to become more relatable. Answering these questions is how you show your hero's personal growth, that complete transformation from beginning to where they are right now. Growth is essential, even for those characters that seem to change very little throughout the series. Tip number 3, show how things could move forward for the characters. The final scenes of your novel set the story up for the next book. This is especially true if you're writing in a series. It's almost as if you're starting to sell the next in the series before you've started writing. You need to allude to the fact that there's still danger ahead for your protagonist, but it needs to be subtle, unlike a cliffhanger that leaves the reader suspended with no real resolution. So nudge at any potential future events by demonstrating that while major arcs have been resolved, there are a few minor conflicts that have yet to be worked out. To help you craft the best denouement scenes for your story, here are 3 examples from literature. In Romeo and Juliet, the families find the bodies of the star-crossed lovers. And at the end, there's another character, and I can't actually remember his name, but I'll put it in the show notes, explains that their deaths are the result of a family feud, leaving members of both sides to feel guilty. In The Great Gatsby, Nick Carraway is trying and failing to plan Gatsby's funeral. It's in this scene where Gatsby's father reveals his son's humble beginnings to Nick. After this moment, he decides to return to the Midwest, but first he reflects on his summer in West Egg in Gatsby's boarded-up house. At the end of the final installment of the Hunger Games trilogy, Katniss and Peter have married and are living a quiet life together with their 2 unnamed children. Or they're unnamed for us, but clearly named for them. It's in this final moment that we realise the actual effects of the events of the 3 novels had on Katniss. It's been a while since I've read this. I think it's from her point of view. And she's talking about her child that she has, or baby, I think it's a baby that she's holding. Maybe I'm confusing the movie and the book. Well, in the movie, you see this scene where she's holding a baby and she's sort of explaining to her baby that she has nightmares. And one day that when she's old enough, she'll be able to explain to the child why she has these nightmares. In order to write a compelling denouement, you need to show the protagonist's condition after his journey, tie off loose ends, and show how things could move forward for the characters. Now I have an important question for you. Are you struggling to write the denouement or the return to the real world scene in your novel? I want to hear from you. Come on over to the show notes at ameliahay.com/episode-024 and share your experience or ask a question in the comments section, or tweet me at writer ADHay, and that's HAY. Coming up next, I have a special announcement for an upcoming episode and a new super fun segment of the show, so make sure you stick around. And if you don't, have a great day and thanks for listening. In a previous episode, I mentioned that I wanted to devote a show of behind the scenes podcast diary to answering a few frequently asked questions on writing and story structure. This bonus Ask Me Anything on Writing show will be released on Thursday, the 28th of February at 6 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you have a question that you'd love me to answer in this bonus episode, then submit your question via the form on my website at ameliahay.com/question. I've decided that I want to start building a community around the podcast through Twitter because at the moment it feels like I'm talking into a void. So I'm a little curious, where are you listening to the Authorpreneur podcast? Feel free to snap a quick photo and tweet me at writer ADHey and I'll share it on the next week's episode. Thank you for listening and happy reading and writing, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Authorpreneur podcast. If you love this episode, then hit the subscribe button and leave a review on your favourite podcasting app. I'm your host, Amelia Hay, and I'll see you next week for another episode.